Cars have come a long way since the first one rolled out in 1886, but some were built with so much power, they rewrote the rules of danger and speed. Number 16, 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. The 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda isn't just a car, it's a thunderstorm on four wheels. Let me tell you why this purple beast is one of the wildest machines America ever built. Under that big shaker hood sits a 426 cubic inch Hemi V8. That's the same monster engine that ruled drag strips in the late 1960s. Plymouth only built 666 of these Hemi Cudas in 1970. Yeah, that's barely 1.3% of all Cudas made that year. You see why people go nuts when one shows up? Now, this one's even rarer. It's got a 4-speed manual gearbox and a hardtop body, which means it's one of only 284 with that combo. Imagine shifting that thing yourself while the Hemi growls like a hungry lion. And get this, the original owner ticked every option box except power steering. Maybe he figured, who needs easy steering when you have huge biceps? Even cooler, it wears that bright in-violet paint, one of those wild, high-impact colors Plymouth offered. No stripes, no big Hemi badges on the fenders, just clean muscle. The owner even masked the Hemi Cuda lettering on the shaker, like he wanted to keep the secret until the light turned green. Now, here's where it gets funny. This car was built for street racing, but it barely left the garage. After 54 years, it's got only 3,900 miles, barely enough to finish a few tankfuls of gas. Still with the original owner, still shining like it just rolled out of 1970. You think that's the lowest mileage one? Nope. Another purple Hemi Cuda popped up a few years ago with just 1,010 miles. Same deal, no stripes, pure muscle, but no vinyl top. And that Hemi wasn't just for show. Back in the muscle car wars, Chrysler stuffed it into everything they could. Cars that won races in France, the Trans Am series, and hill climbs. Number 15, 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. You know what made racers go wild in 1969? The Dodge Charger Daytona. This car was built to slice through air like a rocket. Dodge engineers gave it a long, sharp nose cone and a 23-inch tall rear wing so it could crush wind resistance. That design helped the Daytona fly past 200 miles per hour on the track, a first in NASCAR history. Under that huge hood sat a 440 cubic inch Hemi V8 engine that pushed out 375 horsepower. Imagine that much power roaring through a 4-speed manual gearbox with a Hirsch shifter. Let's talk about the details that made this car unstoppable. Only 503 Daytonas were ever made, just enough to satisfy NASCAR's production rules. Out of those, only 70 came with the legendary Hemi engine. The rest had the 440 cubic inch Magnum V8 with 375 horsepower, which was still a monster on the streets. Each Daytona was born as a Charger 500, and then sent off to get its aerodynamic surgery, the nose cone, the wing, and the smooth rear window. That wing wasn't for style. It gave stability at high speed and kept the car glued to the track. Inside, it was all business. A black vinyl interior, full gauges, a tachometer with a clock, and a wood-rimmed sports steering wheel. The Daytona also came with heavy-duty suspension, power front disc brakes, and the A34 SuperTrack pack. That package included the Sure Grip Dana 60 rear axle with 4.10 ratio gears, perfect for launching hard off the line. Now picture this, March 24th, 1970. Buddy Baker takes the blue car Daytona to Talladega. The crowd watches as it blasts around the track and breaks the world speed record, 200 miles per hour. That's how this car earned its legend. Number 14, 1970, Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. LS6. Now, let's talk about the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. LS6, the car that made every stoplight feel like a racetrack. Powered by a 454 cubic inch V8 engine with a 4.25 inch bore and a 4-inch stroke. It used ported heads, lighter aluminum pistons, and solid lifters to crank out 450 horsepower at 5,600 revolutions per minute and 500 pound-feet of torque at 3,600 revolutions per minute. That's enough muscle to pin you to the seat before you can blink. Now, here's where it gets fun. The LS6 wasn't some common Chevelle trim, it was the king of the bow tie brigade. It was the top dog of the Chevelle lineup, the kind of machine built to rule stoplights and drag strips alike. It came paired with the M22 Rock Crusher, close ratio, 4-speed manual transmission, and a 4.10 positive rear end. That combo made the car leap forward like a beast unleashed. Testers back then clocked it at 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6 seconds flat and a quarter mile in just over 13 seconds. The LS6's power came from serious engineering. It used a high-rise aluminum intake manifold topped with an 800 cubic feet per minute Holley 4-barrel carburetor. The compression ratio sat at 11.25 to 1, and it breathed through Chevrolet's Cowl induction system, feeding the big carburetor with cool outside air through the hood scoop. Every detail was built for performance, from deep groove pulleys to heavy-duty cooling and suspension. And when it came to looks, the Chevelle LS6 didn't need to shout to get attention. Finished in tuxedo black with a blacked-out grille, dual exhaust with bright chrome tips, and that raised power bulge hood, it looked fast even standing still. Inside, the driver got a black vinyl bench seat, a Sun Super tachometer, and a short-throw Hurst shifter waiting to slam gears. Only a small number of these LS6 Chevelles ever left the factory, but every single one carried enough torque to make rivals disappear in the rearview mirror. Number 13, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. I'm telling you, the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 is one of those cars that makes your jaw drop before you even start it. This thing came straight from Chevrolet's secret performance department, built through a special program called COPO 9560. Only 69 of them were ever made, each one packed with a beastly 427 cubic inch all-aluminum V8 engine. It was the same type of engine used in the famous Can Am racing cars, and it made more than 500 horsepower while weighing only about 500 pounds. That's as light as a small block 327 engine, but twice as strong. Now, here's what's amazing. The ZL1 wasn't just built to look fast, it was made for real drag racing. It came with a 12.5 to 1 compression ratio, open chamber aluminum heads, huge valves, and an 850 cubic feet per minute Holley 4-barrel carburetor sitting on a high-rise intake manifold. This setup helped it breathe like a monster at high speeds, reaching over 7,000 revolutions per minute without breaking a sweat. The engine's bottom end was reinforced with forged steel rods and a tough crankshaft, making it nearly bulletproof on the strip. To handle all that power, Chevrolet gave it a close ratio Muncie 4-speed manual gearbox, a 4.10 positive rear axle, and heavy-duty suspension parts borrowed from race cars. It even had power front disc brakes to keep things under control. The hood featured the famous Cowl induction scoop that pulled in cool air right to the carburetor for more punch. Everything about this car screamed performance, from the transistorized ignition to the special 5-leaf rear springs built to handle brutal launches. And let's not forget how it looked. Fathom green paint, black bucket seats, small hubcaps, and the simple, no-nonsense design that told everyone it meant business. When racers like Dick Mr. Chevrolet Harrell got behind the wheel, this Camaro set records, ran 11-second quarter miles, and even took championship titles. That's why when you hear the name ZL1, you don't think Camaro, you think pure, unstoppable power. Number 12, 1968 Ford Mustang 428 Cobra Jet. No doubt the 1968 Ford Mustang 428 Cobra Jet was a car that made other muscle cars nervous. It carried a massive 428 cubic inch V8 engine, rated at 335 horsepower, but everyone knew it packed a lot more. The torque was wild, 445 pound-feet at just 3,400 revolutions per minute. You could feel the ground shake even before the tires moved. The secret was in its longer stroke and clever breathing system. The Cobra Jet used a 735 cubic feet per minute Holley carburetor on a dual plain iron intake manifold. And here's the fun part. It was the first Mustang ever to breathe fresh outside air through its hood scoop. When you hit the throttle, a little flapper door opened up, letting cool air rush in for extra power. It wasn't fancy tech, it was brilliant simplicity. Now, the story of how it came to life is just as wild. Bob Tasca, a Ford dealer from Rhode Island, wasn't happy with how the 390 Mustang performed, so he built his own version using factory parts, called it the KR8, and it smoked everything in sight. Ford noticed, magazines wrote about it, and soon enough, the Cobra Jet was born in mid-1968. That's how one dealer's garage idea turned into one of Ford's deadliest creations. Most Cobra Jets came in the fastback body style, but Ford also built a few coupes and convertibles. Everyone carried the GT package, fog lights, side stripes, pop-open gas cap, and a heavy-duty suspension. The fastbacks weighed just over 3,200 pounds, light enough to sprint through the quarter mile in the low 14-second range at nearly 100 miles per hour. That's fast for a street-legal car from the 60s. Every detail on this Mustang showed performance. The cast-iron manifolds were shaped for better flow. The 3.89 rear gears pushed it off the line like a slingshot. And even the hood stripe wasn't for looks. It reduced glare at high speeds. This was the car that brought Ford's muscle reputation roaring back to life. And once you've heard a 428 Cobra Jet sound, trust me, you never forget it. Number 11, 1969 Pontiac GTO The Judge. The 1969 Pontiac GTO The Judge came in screaming, with a color called carousel red that looked more like orange fire under the sun. It wore bold stripes, a giant rear spoiler, and loud "The Judge" decals that told everyone this was not a car you ignored at a stoplight. Pontiac built this beast when GTO sales started to fall, and boy, did they make a comeback plan. The Judge came with the Ram Air 3 engine, 400 cubic inches of muscle, pushing 366 horsepower. You could even pick the Ram Air 4 version with a bit more punch if you were the type who thought speeding tickets were collector's items. Air didn't just hit this car, it got sucked in through real, functional hood scoops that fed the Rochester Quadrajet 4-barrel carburetor. That's where the Ram Air name came from. I like to think of it as a giant vacuum for horsepower. Even the sound it made could send goosebumps down your spine. And when you stepped inside, it was all business. Bucket seats came in 6 color options, black being the classic pick. The custom sport steering wheel and Hurst T-handle shifter added that perfect old-school feel. Everything inside screamed, this car means business, but in a very stylish way. Moving on, the GTO. The Judge rolled on 14-inch Rally 2 wheels with fat Goodyear polyglass tires gripping the road. Pontiac skipped trim rings to save weight, and it made the wheels look tougher. 4-wheel drum brakes came standard, but smart drivers added front disc brakes, because stopping power matters when you're taming this kind of monster. Even the rear spoiler was special, 5 feet wide, needing stronger deck lid rods to hold it up. Every inch of this car had purpose. From his roaring engine to that wild paint job, the Judge was Pontiac's way of saying, court is in session. Number 10, 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 426 Hemi. The 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 426 Hemi is a machine that speaks pure power. It came straight from Davenport Dodge in Iowa. Used first as a dealer demo car and packed one of the most feared engines ever built, a 426 cubic inch Hemi V8. That's 425 horsepower, ready to shake the ground, breathing through dual 4-barrel Carter carburetors. Every part of this engine was built for performance, from its 26-inch radiator to the 7-blade torque drive fan that kept it cool under pressure. Now, this masterpiece wasn't just about what was under the hood. It looked like it wanted to fight the moment you saw it. Finished in bright Hemi orange, with a black vinyl roof and matching black side stripes, it had a sport hood with dual scoops, hood pins, racing mirrors, and a locking fuel cap. It even came with the A34 Super Track Pack, giving it a Dana 60 rear axle and a 4.10-to-1 final drive ratio. That meant brutal acceleration and true control on the drag strip. And let's talk about the wheels. 15-inch rally wheels wrapped in Goodyear polyglass GT tires gave it that mean planted stance. The suspension was no joke either. It was the Hemi suspension handling package, paired with power-assisted front disc brakes. So stopping this heavyweight muscle wasn't a prayer, it was precision. Inside, the Challenger RT felt like a proper driver's cockpit. High back bucket seats wrapped in black vinyl, a pistol grip 4-speed shifter right at hand, and wood grain trim running across the dash and center console. Even the steering wheel had that wood grain ream blow design, framing a 150-mile-per-hour speedometer and an 8,000 revolutions per minute tachometer. The 5-digit odometer showed only 6,300 miles, barely broken in. This Hemi Challenger might have weighed nearly 3,890 pounds, but it made that weight count. The traction from those fat tires and the sound of that dual exhaust rumble made every drive feel like a power trip through history. Number 9, 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. Moving on to a car that didn't just rule the streets, it scared them into silence. The 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1 was a monster built for one thing: pure power. It carried a 455 cubic inch V8 engine that made 510 pound-feet of torque. That's enough twist to pull a small building, if you ever tried. Buick engineers gave it a high lift cam, 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, and bigger valves, all tuned to launch this heavy beast like a rocket. Now, what's wild is that Buick wasn't even known for muscle cars. It was the brand your uncle bought for comfort. But in 1970, Buick decided to show everyone it could play rough too. GM finally lifted the rule that limited engine size, and Buick jumped right in. The GSX came with 2 paint choices only: Saturn Yellow and Apollo White, both named straight out of the space race. Around 400 of these Stage 1 versions were built, and that rarity makes it even more legendary. You could pick between a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic transmission, but either way, it was a handful to control. The car could blast through the quarter mile in 13.38 seconds at 105.5 miles per hour. That's quick enough to earn it the title from Motor Trend as the quickest American production muscle car. And guess what? It even came with air conditioning, something most muscle cars didn't dare include because it robbed power. Buick said, "We'll take both speed and comfort, thank you." Inside, it had a hood-mounted tachometer, racing stripes, front and rear spoilers, and gauges that made you feel like you were sitting in a fighter jet. Only 65 cars came without power steering, which meant you really had to work those arms to handle it. Number 8, 1971 Plymouth Roadrunner 446 barrel. The 1971 Plymouth Roadrunner 446 barrel was one of those machines that didn't just make noise, it made statements. Built in the last glory year of true high-performance muscle, this car packed a 440 cubic inch V8 engine with 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors. Plymouth called it the 6-barrel, and when all 3 opened up, it pulled in over 1,000 cubic feet of air every minute. That sound alone could scare the air itself. Rated at 385 to 390 horsepower and running a 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, it launched like a missile the moment you hit the gas. Now let's talk about how it looked. This model came in a sleek fuselage-style body, smoother and rounder than before, shaped by Chrysler's aerodynamic testing. The design wasn't just pretty, it was fast, and it helped Richard Petty win 21 NASCAR races and the very first Winston Cup title that same year. The car's Y4 light gold paint and black strobe stripe made it look like speed itself had a logo. Add the spoilers, hood pins, chrome sport mirrors, and Goodyear polyglass tires, and you had a muscle car that looked ready to race even while parked. Moving inside, the Roadrunner kept things simple but serious. A bench seat, pistol grip shifter, and that A8334 4-speed manual made it all business. You felt every move the car made through your right hand and both feet. A Dana 60 differential out back helped handle all that power, keeping traction when the rear tires screamed for mercy. What made 1971 so special was that it marked the final stand for real-deal high-compression muscle. Only 137 of these 446-barrel Roadrunners were ever built, making each one a rare breed. Trust me, when this thing fired up, it didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. Number 7, 1969 Dodge Super Bia 12. The 1969 Dodge Super BA-12 was built for pure muscle, not luxury. This car was Dodge's answer to anyone who thought power had to come with a fancy badge. The A12 package came in mid-1969 and turned the regular Super B into a street weapon. It packed a 440 cubic inch Magnum V8 engine with 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors sitting on an Edelbrock aluminum intake. Dodge called it the 6-pack, and it was every bit as wild as it sounds. Rated at 390 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, it could light up the rear tires faster than most people could blink. Speaking of looks, A12 came with a matte black fiberglass liftoff hood that had a huge scoop and the words 6-pack screaming on top. It wasn't for decoration, it gulped air like a tornado. The car rode on 15-inch black steel wheels with G7015 polyglass redline tires that made it look ready for the drag strip at any moment. The bright Hemi orange paint didn't whisper fast, it shouted it. You could also get it in wild Mopar colors like Plum Crazy or Top Banana, which fit its personality perfectly. Shifting through the gears was a thrill. You had a choice between a heavy-duty Torque Flight 3-speed automatic or a 4-speed manual transmission with a Hurst Competition Plus shifter. A Dana 60 Sure Grip rear axle with a 4.10 ratio helped every ounce of torque hit the pavement. The A12 also came with heavy-duty 11-inch drum brakes and a reinforced suspension setup that kept all that power under control. Only 1,907 of these beasts were ever built, making each one special. Stretching over 17 feet long and weighing around 3,435 pounds, it was a heavyweight fighter that still ran the quarter mile in 13 seconds flat. Number 6. 1987 Buick GNX. The Buick GNX from 1987 is one of those cars that doesn't whisper, it growls. Built as the final and fiercest version of the Regal Grand National, it was made with help from McLaren Performance Technologies and ASC. Only 5 147 were ever built, each painted in deep black that made it look like trouble even before it moved. It used a 232 cubic inch turbocharged and intercooled V6 engine, tuned to unleash around 300 horsepower. The boost pressure climbed to 16 pounds per square inch, and when the turbo spun up, the GNX leapt forward like it had been kicked. It could hit 60 miles per hour in 4.7 seconds and run a quarter mile in 13.5 seconds at 102 miles per hour. That made it quicker than almost anything else on American roads back then, except a Porsche 911 Turbo. Now, the transmission wasn't some fancy stick setup. It had a 4-speed automatic, but ASC modified its valve body, so it shifted right at redline, with a thump that made you grin. The rear suspension got a serious redesign too. A torque arm and a panhard rod replaced the old diagonal links, keeping the back end planted when you launched hard. Buick even gave it a machined aluminum rear housing to handle all that stress. The GNX rolled on 16-inch black mesh aluminum wheels, wrapped in Goodyear Eagle VR50 tires. Wide ones, 245 at the front and 255 at the back. New fiberglass fender flares gave it that muscular stance. And the whole car looked like it belonged at the drag strip, even while parked at the grocery store. Step inside and it switched from dark menace to bright metal. Real Stewart Warner gauges tracked boost, oil pressure, and temperature. The gray seats were firm and grippy, perfect for hanging on during those full boost runs. When that turbo hissed and the tires screamed, it wasn't just a car making noise. It was a piece of Detroit muscle saying goodbye in the loudest way possible. Number 5, 1990, Chevrolet Corvette ZR-1. The Corvette ZR-1 from 1990 is what happens when America decides to scare Europe a little. Built to show that Detroit could run with Ferrari and Porsche, this machine was more than a sports car. It was a scientific experiment in raw speed and precision. Its heart was a 350 cubic inch, 32-valve, aluminum V8 built by Mercury Marine and designed with Lotus. It produced 375 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque, numbers that could turn any quiet road into a racetrack. This V8 was called the LT5, and it pulled like a jet engine. The ZR-1 could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds and hit 100 miles per hour in just over 10 seconds. Top speed? 175 miles per hour, fast enough to make the scenery blur into one long line. But it wasn't just about raw power. The 6-speed ZF manual transmission made each shift feel like cracking a safe, smooth, precise, and mechanical in the best way. Now, about those tires. Goodyear Eagles so wide, they looked ready to swallow the road whole. 10.8 inches up front and 315 at the rear. The rear end was 3 inches wider just to fit them in. When you stood behind it, it looked like the car was flexing its muscles. And that extra width wasn't for show. It meant traction that could glue this beast to the pavement through high-speed corners. Its suspension used selective ride control with 3 settings: touring, sport, and performance. In touring, it cruised comfortably. In performance, it felt like driving a rocket on rails. Add in vented disc brakes from PBR Automotive, 13 inches up front, and you got stopping power that matched its speed perfectly. Inside, it was all business. Digital and analog gauges worked together to keep the driver informed, and a unique power key could limit or unleash its full fury. Some called it the Corvette from hell. Others called it King of the Hill. Either way, when that LT5 screamed past 5,800 revolutions per minute, everyone agreed. This car rewrote the definition of it. Number 4. 1993 Ford Mustang SVT Cobra. The 1993 Ford Mustang SVT Cobra redefined how the Fox body Mustang went out. Built by Ford's new Special Vehicle Team, or SVT, it was made to prove that the Mustang could still dominate even with new rivals like the Camaro and Firebird waiting in the wings. It packed a 302 cubic inch V8 engine, tuned with GT40 cast iron cylinder heads, a Cobra-specific intake, 24 pound-per-hour fuel injectors, and a bigger 2.7 inches mass air meter. The result was 235 horsepower at 4,600 revolutions per minute and 280 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 revolutions per minute. But everyone knew it made closer to 270 in reality. That power ran through a Borg-Warner T5 5-speed manual transmission with phosphate-coated gears and a traction-lock limited-slip rear axle using 3.08 gears. It could blast from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.9 seconds and cross the quarter mile in 14.5 seconds at 98 miles per hour. Not bad for what started life as a regular pony car. Not only this, the shocks and struts came from Tokiko and were tuned just for this car. The front anti-roll bar was smaller for better comfort, while the rear bushings were stiffer to keep it tight through corners. The Cobra also swapped in linear rate springs, making it more predictable when pushed hard. It was softer than the GT, but actually handled better, like a muscle car that had been to finishing school. Now the design. The Cobra looked subtly, almost polite, until you noticed the differences. The front bumper had larger openings to feed more air, and the rear spoiler was unique. Fog lights were tucked neatly in the nose, and the taillights were unlike any other Mustang that year. Then, there were those 17-inch directional aluminum wheels, the largest ever fitted to a Mustang at the time, wearing Goodyear Eagle tires that could grip like a hungry pit bull. Step inside and it was pure early 90s cool. Opal gray leather seats with power lumbar support, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, and a speedometer that proudly read up to 140 miles per hour. It was the last of its kind, the Fox body Mustang's final roar, tuned to perfection by SVT. Number 3, 1996 Chevrolet Impala SS. The 1996 Chevrolet Impala SS was built like a full-size superhero in black armor. It used the same strong bones as the police Caprice 9C1, which means it came ready for action. Power came from a 350 cubic inch LT1V8 engine, the same type found in the Corvette, making 260 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. That's what gave this big four-door its mean streak. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds and a quarter mile in 15 seconds flat. For a car that weighed more than 4,000 pounds, that was no small trick. Its engine was paired with a 4-speed automatic transmission that handled power like a pro. And thanks to a limited-slip rear differential, both back wheels worked together for strong launches. The Impala SS could stop and turn better than anyone expected from something its size. It borrowed heavy-duty suspension, anti-lock brakes, and decarbon shocks straight from the police package. That setup made it ride smooth, but still handle like it meant business. The exterior looked clean, bold, and a bit menacing. No bright chrome, no shiny trim, just a black grille, a small rear spoiler, and a sculpted body with a sharp Hofmeister kink at the D-pillar. Big 17-inch aluminum wheels filled those cutout fenders perfectly, wrapped in low-profile tires that gripped tight. And with dark paint like black, dark cherry, or dark green-gray, it looked like a villain car that meant trouble for slow traffic. Inside, it felt like a muscle car wearing a suit. Leather bucket seats replaced the bench, and the center console held the shifter by 1996. The dash was simple but functional, with a tachometer and analog gauges for that classic look. Everything felt solid, from the steering to the pedal response. The best part? It was a true full-size performance sedan, room for family, power for fun, and durability built for police duty. Number 2, 1989 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Turbo, a 20th anniversary. The 1989 Pontiac Turbo Trans Am was a rocket that wore a Firebird badge. It used a 232 cubic inch turbocharged V6 engine borrowed from Buick's legendary Grand National. But this time, it had better airflow, new cylinder heads, and an intercooler to keep things cool and sharp. The result was wild, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.6 seconds, and a quarter mile in 13.4 seconds at 101 miles per hour. That made it the fastest production car in America at that time, even beating Corvettes and Ferraris. This car didn't need tricks or fancy launches. You just hold the brake, rev to 2,100 revolutions per minute, and release. It fired off like a slingshot. The turbo gauge danced near 16.5 pounds of boost, and the 4-speed automatic gearbox shifted with instant precision at just above 5,000 revolutions per minute. By the time you blink twice, it's already past 130 miles per hour, and it could top out at 153 miles per hour without any limiter stopping it. The setup used a knock sensor to keep the engine safe, cutting spark and boost if things got too hot. Pontiac rated it at 250 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque, but everyone knew it was closer to 300 in truth, and the lighter V6 meant it handled sharper than V8 Trans Ams too. Handling was tight and responsive, gripping at 0.88 G with Goodyear Gatorback tires. The big 11.9-inch front brakes gave strong stopping power, though the rear locked a bit early. Number 1. 1998 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am WS6. The 1998 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am WS6 wastes no time showing attitude. It's got a 350 cubic inch LS1 V8, the same legend that powered the Corvette, pushing 320 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque. Paired with a 6-speed manual transmission, it's a proper handshake between muscle and precision. You shift, it answers. No delay, no hesitation. And then there's the Ram air induction. Those twin nostrils on the hood aren't for looks. They force cool air straight into the engine, giving that V8 an extra kick when you bury the pedal. It's a feature that made the WS6 badge a serious threat on the street. The sound alone feels like a challenge. Moving to the body, it's all aggression and style. 17-inch polished 5-spoke wheels, flared fenders, and a wraparound rear spoiler that makes the whole car look ready to strike. Even parked, it looks fast. The removable T-top roof means you can pop the panels off and let the wind roar through while the car's thunder carries you forward. Talk about interior, and it's all about control. Gray leather seats hold you tight, the power driver's seat adjusts exactly how you want it, and the gauges glow orange like they're daring you to push harder. The steering feels sharp, the brakes bite hard with 4-wheel discs, and every pedal press feels deliberate. Air conditioning, cruise control, and a monsoon sound system remind you it's still civilized barely. What made the WS6 special wasn't just looks or comfort, it was how it handled. Wider tires, a tighter suspension, and improved steering turned corners into playgrounds. Every turn begged for more throttle. That's all for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.